Hello, and thank you for joining this presentation on the National Science Foundation Graduate Research Fellowship Program and today's presentation on personal statements. I'm Dr. Matthew Plusser, Assistant Dean of the Graduate School, and part of my role in the Graduate School is that of Fellowship Advisor. I'm here to help you and support you through your application to nationally competitive graduate fellowships, including the NSF-GRFP. In In today's presentation, we'll be discussing an overview of the NSF-GRFP and eligibility, and we'll dive into personal statements, getting started, intellectual merits and broader impacts, writing about your experience, suggested page structure, some writing tips, common weaknesses, drafting your statement, and a few tips on proofreading and seeking feedback. Then we'll go into some frequently asked questions and the resources that are available to you. The NSF-GRFP helps ensure the vitality of the human resource base of science and engineering in the United States and reinforces its diversity. The program recognizes and supports outstanding graduate students, and NSF supports science, technology, engineering, and mathematics disciplines who are pursuing research-based master's and doctoral degrees at accredited United States institutions. As the oldest graduate fellowship of its kind, the GRFP has a long history of selecting recipients who achieve high levels of success in their future academic and professional careers. The reputation of the NSF-GRFP follows recipients and often helps them become lifelong leaders that contribute significantly to both scientific and innovation and teaching. Past fellows include numerous Nobel Prize winners, former and current legislative and government leaders, corporate world leaders, and authors. The NSF provides a number of benefits. The NSF-GRFP is a 5-year fellowship that includes 3 years of funding. 3 years of funding over a 5-year period allows you to strategically use the fellowship when it makes the most sense for you. The graduate program you are in may require specific amount of time in a research lab or teaching classes as part of your graduate experience. You may also have other fellowship funding that cannot be stacked with the GRFP. So this will allow you to utilize those opportunities when they come up and saving your fellowship for when it makes the most sense for you to use. The stipend is $37,000 a year and for 3 years. This is paid monthly on the first of each month, about $3,000 and some change. Taxes are not withheld and are the responsibility of the student, the graduate fellow, to manage. Tuition coverage for all 3 years. All tuition is covered, fall, spring, and summer semesters. And the NSF does provide a career life balance, which includes family and parental leave, medical leave, etc., as well as access to professional development opportunities such as the National Science Foundation Internship Program, where you can extend your fellowship by up to 6 months in completing an internship in a non-academic setting, such as in the corporate world, the public sector, nonprofit world, and government world. From the University of Utah, just like other colleges and universities, we provide some additional benefits to support our graduate research fellows here on this campus. This includes, for each year of funding, health insurance coverage for you, the fellow, and a $2,000 a year research expense that can provide resources for you as a student and in your research, as well as professional development needs such as conferences, travel, and skill-based opportunities such as a coding boot camp that you may need. And additionally, some faculty advisors provide some additional funding on top of the National Science Foundation benefits. Other non-monetary benefits that are very important to consider here. The fellowship is mobile. You can take it anywhere in the United States as long as the institution is accredited in the United States and provides a research-based master's or doctoral program in your area of study. Particularly for those of you applying as undergraduates, as rising seniors, this can perhaps provide a step up in graduate admissions. You'll be applying for the Graduate Research Fellowship most likely before you submit your applications for your graduate programs. And so for you, those of you who are undergrads, and so this may impact your review and evaluation by those graduate programs. It provides prestige and recognition for you and your academic achievements, your academic potential, as well as you as a scholar and a leader. This does boost your resume and CV, and it establishes a pattern of seeking and hopefully getting external funding. We say in the fellowship world that the benefit is in the process because through applying for fellowships and scholarships, you develop certain skills and you exercise those skills. So you are establishing a pattern of seeking funding. For those of you who are going into academic world upon graduation, so being a professor or researcher in academia, as well as those going into government contract work, nonprofit work, having skills of seeking and hopefully getting external funding will be key and a very important factor that you take into those job interviews. To be eligible for the NSF-GRFP, you must be a United States citizen, national, or permanent resident, and intend to enrolled or intend to enroll in a research-based master's or doctoral program in an eligible STEM field. For those of you who are rising seniors, you have not yet been accepted into a graduate program, most likely. And again, you may be applying for the fellowship before you submit your grad school applications. So it's that intent to enroll. And your doctor or master's must be in an eligible STEM field. These are overall categories: chemistry, computer and information science and engineering, geoscience, life sciences, materials research, mathematical sciences, physics and astronomy, psychology, social sciences, and STEM education. Under each of these categories are going to be subfields that you will identify those that align most accurately with your area of research or intended research. So, for example, you may be studying chemistry, but your project may be focusing on artificial intelligence. Under the category of chemistry is artificial intelligence. So you select that subfield under the overall broad field of chemistry. A couple other important notes here. The National Science Foundation defines social sciences as being part of STEM. This includes science policy, public policy, anthropology, economics, sociology, among other fields. And STEM education and learning research focuses more on how STEM education is being researched and evaluated and taught. Not so much on getting, let's say, a master's in chemistry education to go teach chemistry in the K-12 system. This is going to be more of evaluating how chemistry is being taught and developing new methodologies. So we've talked about who is supported. Now we're going to cover who is not supported by the NSF-GRFP. Joint science and professional programs or dual degree programs, including JD, PhD, MD, PhD, among others. The NSF does expect that the fellows they are supporting are focusing on their research and their research projects and their research-based degree and not splitting their focus with other distractions such as multiple degrees. Additionally, business administration and management degrees, mental health, counseling, and social work degrees, history degrees outside of those of history of science, education outside of STEM education and learning research, and professional degrees such as professional science masters, masters of public health, and medical laboratory sciences are not supported. Additionally, research within disease-related goals, unless you are in a biomedical engineering discipline, in clinical research, which includes patient-oriented research, epidemiological and medical behavioral studies, outcomes research, and health services research, and pharmacological and non-pharmacological behavioral interventions and studies are not supported by the NSF-GRFP. The application has three primary components. In addition to an online portal where you'll enter various demographic and background information, you have three components. First is transcripts. This is required from all degree granting institutions you've attended. Those of you who are applying as first-year graduate students, you do not yet have a transcript at your graduate institution for your graduate degree. What you will do in this case is go to your office of the registrar, where you would also get transcripts, and request in an enrollment verification form. This provides all the basic information of a transcript without grades because you have not yet earned grades for your graduate program. You have two statements, the personal statement, which we will talk about today, and the graduate research plan statement. And lastly, reference letters. Two letters are required to be uploaded by your recommendation writers in order to be reviewed by NSF-GRFP reviewers. It's recommended that you have three. In the portal, you'll be able to identify up to 5 letter of recommendation writers. You'll input their name and their email addresses, and they'll be prompted by the NSF to upload a letter of recommendation, and that prompt will include background on what they should be writing about, formatting, and limitations such as page requirements. So all that information will be shared with those recommendation writers. You can rank those 5 recommendations, first choice all the way to 5th choice. This allows you the opportunity to have maximum recommendation letters as part of your review should something unexpected happen, such as a first or second choice recommendation writer for whatever life reason, life happens, Wi-Fi goes down among other emergencies, and they're not able to submit a letter of recommendation, you will have some spares to be included in your review. Your personal relevant background and future goals statement or personal statement is a maximum of 3 pages, which is code for fill all 3 pages. You want to use every inch of available real estate for your statement. In this, you must address broader impacts and intellectual merits under their own unique headers. The NSF does have this requirement that if you do not have headers of broader impacts and intellectual merits, your application will not be reviewed. This is your opportunity to talk about who you are, how you've prepared for graduate school and research, and your professional and leadership goals post-doctorate. I recommend that you begin by reflecting on your story. Consider the following prompts. What is unique, distinctive, or impressive about your particular story? We all arrive at graduate school or preparations for graduate school from different backgrounds. We all, even in the same discipline, we have very different backgrounds that led us to a PhD in whatever area of study. We all became interested in that area of study and research from different means. So, what is unique and impressive about your background? What details about you would help set you apart that you feel are important for reviewers to know? How did you become interested in your particular field? Is there a personal anecdote you can share? And what have you learned about yourself in that process? What had you learned about the field through classes, readings, seminars, and perhaps some time in industry, those work experience? What initiative did you take to proactively seek these learning experiences and educationally enriching opportunities? How have you capitalized upon what the opportunities have been available to you? Or perhaps you've had a need that you've not had an opportunity handed to you, so you've had to go out and create or seek that opportunity. And what reasons overall can you give reviewers to be interested in you and your story? Remember, really importantly, the NSF Graduate Fellowship funds you as an individual, as a scholar, and as a growing and burgeoning leader. Graduate fellowships are different from research grants. The NSF may be funding your faculty advisor's research lab. Your PI wrote the NSF a grant proposal to conduct a specific type of research, and their lab is focused on conducting and executing that research. A graduate research fellowship, on the other hand, is funding you. You will complete research in your graduate program and you will propose a project in your research plan statement, but it is not a research grant. So it is supporting you as an individual. So you want to consider the following questions. Why are you pursuing graduate school? Why are you studying science in your specific field? What are you most passionate about with science? It is okay to show your passion for your studies and your area of interest. Share an outstanding research experience and challenges you've overcome. Start with a hook. You want to draw your reader in and make them excited to read all 3 pages of your statement. This could include a story of what sparked your interest in science, a unique research experience, perhaps a light bulb moment when you found like this is suddenly making sense, or perhaps where you found I like this research, and I would actually like to go to grad school and learn more about this and do this full time for the next 20 years. You may have a research interest that is very unique, and you can share why it's important to you specifically. Unique leadership or outreach experience relating to STEM, a dimension of STEM that you are passionate about. Again, feel free to show that passion. Your broader impacts in the community around you, and an unexpected twist that led you where you are today. Quite often, we arrive in graduate school never having intended of going to graduate school when we started our bachelor's degree. We didn't think that we were going to go and pursue a PhD. What changed that path for you to where you are today? What exciting opportunity opened up for you that made you excited to go to graduate school? As mentioned earlier, you must address intellectual merits and broader impacts, and this is going to be on the left side of this matrix. Uh, your personal statement, you're going to talk about your merit and your impact. Intellectual merits is where you describe your potential to advance knowledge through research and scholarly activities. So, what has prepared you and given you that acumen and that ability to advance knowledge through research and scholarly activities? This is your history and preparation as a student, as a scholar, as a leader. Again, what are those educationally enriching opportunities that you've been able to engage in, and how have they impacted you? Documented intellectual abilities such as GPA, awards, etc., and evidence of your ability to plan and conduct research, work independently, communicate research, take initiative, solve problems, persist, lead, among other dimensions of who you are. I want to speak specifically on the documented intellectual ability and GPA. The NSF and any fellowship advisor you talk to will say that you need a strong GPA to apply for the Graduate Research Fellowship. However, we will not define for you what a strong GPA is because this will be different for each individual. Some of you will have started undergrad and been an excellent student from day one, getting top grades. Others may have started uh, as an undeclared major, engaging in general education classes to find where your niche is. You may have struggled with the new structure of college because it's very different from high school, or you may have had various roadblocks where you may not have performed as well in your classes. And then let's say you found physics or biology and that's your area, that is something that you're very excited about, and you've performed much better in those classes. So your overall GPA might not be as high as you would like, but once you're in your major, your GPA is very high. It's very competitive. Um, and this also provides a nice narrative to show that you've had these challenges, but you grew from them. You adapted, you developed resilience to make you stronger. And that's going to be valuable for you in your graduate experience and in conducting research. Broader impacts, on the other hand, are where you describe your impact on society personally and through your research. How you've engaged in the community around you. This could be participation with and impact on diverse populations, outreach, teaching, mentoring, and impacting STEM education in schools and community. This could be in college organizations, high school organizations. You might even be um, committed to volunteering at a Title I school, helping third graders with multiplication tables or science experiments. That's valuable, broader impacts to talk about. Impact in creating and cultivating a diverse workforce and increased collaboration between academic and industry sectors. Keep in mind, I'm listing a lot of different things that would be considered broader impacts. You do not have to identify with each of these bullets, and you may have broader impacts that are not even being mentioned here. So writing about your experience, you want to describe the projects you worked on, including who was your research advisor or faculty mentor, or the PI of that lab. How did you get involved in that research project? What was your role? Were you independent or a part of a team? What sort of skills or knowledge was gained from that experience? It might not be specific to what you plan to do in the future, but experience is experience. Skills and knowledge are skills and knowledge, and they have value. What were the results of those projects that you worked on? Were there publications, presentations, or other recognition and accolades? As you structure your 3 pages, consider here your background, relevant background, your present, which is college, your undergrad, as well as completing graduate school, and your future. And the future isn't, next year in my PhD program. Rather, it's what are the next 20 to 30 years looking like for you? What do you hope to achieve in your career? What type of career do you want? The paths down which you hope to grow as a scholar, as a professional, as a leader. And so here's what that page structure might look like. This is just a suggestion that may help you get rolling with your first draft. Start with a hook. Tell a story of why you're in grad school or what led you here, what you hope to achieve in graduate school or as a result of going to graduate school. What is your relevant background? What sort of challenges may you have faced and overcome? And detailing, of course, if you ever talk about a challenge, talk about how you've managed that challenge, how you've developed resilience and overcome that. This could be how your relevant background could include how you became interested in science. Was there a formative experience that led you down the path where you are today? Then move into your intellectual merits, including your research experiences. Then your broader impacts, including your personal outreach, international experiences, teaching and mentoring experiences, the leadership that you've honed. Then your preparedness to plan and conduct research. What are those research experiences? What skills did you learn? How have you grown as a researcher through those experiences? And what are your future goals? In the next 20 to 30 years, do you want to go into academia? Do you plan to go into industry? What does that mean for you going into industry? What does that mean going into academia? You might want to go into a professorial position to be a researcher at an R1 research intensive university like the University of Utah. Or you might want to focus on teaching STEM and helping undergrads become more excited about STEM and have a better experience that leads them down a stronger path. And you might want to do that at a teaching intensive institution like Salt Lake Community College or Utah Valley University, schools like that. Whatever you are envisioning as your pathway, talk about that. Some writing tips for successful applications. Write clearly, let your own personal voice flow. As scholarship and fellowship reviewers, we can tell when students are trying to be who they think we want them to be rather than just being your natural self. Be natural. That's how you're going to let your passion and your interests really shine. Uh, in that clarity, you want to be pithy and succinct, only include what is necessary, omit unnecessary language, particularly technical jargon. Your reviewers will not necessarily be in your specific niche area of research or even in your field of study. Use shorter words over longer, more complicated vocabulary. You want it to flow well, you want it to be easy to read, but also complicated vocabulary can take up a lot more space. And because of space, make sure each sentence is useful and purposeful to the application statement. Know your audience. Your reviewers are faculty, they are researchers, they are graduate student advisors. Um, they go to work every day, they teach lecture classes, they teach other classes, they have to grade papers, they have to work on their own research, they're working on presentations and journal articles that they are in the middle of writing. They are supervising students in the lab, they are supervising PhD student projects. They have busy lives outside of committee meetings and their academic and scholarly responsibilities. They have ballet lessons and swimming lessons for their kids. They have that never ending pile of laundry that we all are feeling. And so after a busy day, they then hit 10 o'clock at night and ready to go to bed and realize I have a review meeting tomorrow. I have to read 10 applications before 8 o'clock in the morning. So this is something that they do on top of their day job, on top of their busy lives, being a reviewer for competitive fellowships like this. So that's why it's especially important that you have a good flow, great clarity. It's easy to read. using digestible bite-sized pieces of information. Write in a way that gets readers excited uh, to read your paper, but easy for them to make a decision. Be confident in yourself. Again, I cannot stress this enough. The NSF is funding you, not your PI, not your research team, not even the university that you attend. It is a fellowship that you take wherever you choose to attend. So take ownership of your background, your scholarly experiences, your research experiences, your achievements. Don't underestimate or undervalue your accomplishments. You want to highlight the role that you've played in projects and research and leadership roles. Use I statements as opposed to we statements. Tell your compelling story. We so often hear students write about their lab experiences, their scholarly experiences by saying, in our research lab or my PI's lab, we did this, we did that. That's great. Mention what the overall goal was, but then follow that directly with, and my role was in the lab, I did this. I may have been just one cog in the machine, but here is my contribution to the overall picture. So take ownership of those skills that you learned, of the day-to-day work that you did, the difference that you made in that lab. The NSF does have certain outreach goals to attract a diverse and qualified applicant pool with particular attention to students who are attending or will be attending or have attended minority serving institutions such as HBCUs, Hispanic serving institutions, predominantly Black institutions, tribal colleges, etc. So if you come from these backgrounds, feel free to talk about how those were formative experiences for you. Students studying in or who grew up in EPSCoR jurisdictions. EPSCoR is areas or territories that are identified by the NSF as being less competitive than other areas. So California with all the research and research universities there, even Utah with our R1 institution, research intensive university here, among other universities and research that we have here, we are competitive areas for research. But there are other states and territories that are not, like the United States Virgin Islands, Puerto Rico, which are United States territories, and states like Idaho and Wyoming, where STEM research is not as competitive, and they are wanting to support more students attending those universities who've come from those universities, who grew up in those areas. So if you come from an EPSCoR jurisdiction, talk about that. And non-traditional education tracks, particularly those of you who are non-traditional students. You may have come to college later, or you may have finished undergrad and then gone into the workforce for a number of years and are now going back to graduate school. You are encouraged to apply. Please apply. You are just as competitive as any other applicant. However, you do have an additional responsibility in your research statement or in your personal statement. In your narrative, you need to discuss the why factor about returning to college. Um, this is, why are you going back to school, and why are you going back to school now? Why are you pursuing graduate education, and why in this area of study? Why in this area of research? And what has been your motivation to take this step to go back to school, these series of steps? In my experience working with non-traditional students, not only is it your responsibility to talk about this as it is a pivotal part of your narrative, of your story, this can be a really compelling narrative to talk about and a very exciting one for reviewers to read. Some common weaknesses that we see in personal statements: an unorganized personal statement that does not tell a clear story. The reader has to jump all over the place and it's hard to connect the dots. Personal statements are unclear, incomplete, or unpolished. Failure to own your experiences. Again, use those, talk about those experiences, be proud of them, and use I statements. Unclear future goals, vague descriptions of experiences, dense writing that is too difficult to understand or is uninteresting. Again, your reviewers are very busy faculty, but on top of that, the NSF review adds an additional dimension to that, where it is when finals in the winter are happening. We start reviews when final exams are being done, final projects are being graded. We're under deadlines with the university to get those grades entered so that you can have your final grades at the end of the term. And also during winter break, I've had a few reviewers comment to me just how challenging it can be for them personally to have to sit down and read research projects and personal statements and evaluate um, applications when their kids want to go sledding with them and they want to spend time with family that is visiting over winter holidays and whatnot. So it is, we want to make it especially helpful for your reviewers that it's easy to read. It's not too dense. It's a little lighter. It's interesting and entertaining. It is a joy for them to read. And part of that is removing unnecessary jargon. And lastly, a very common weakness is failure to address your broader impacts. We talked about intellectual merits and how you are prepared as a student, how you have documented intellectual abilities and such. In my experience, students do a pretty good job of including that, but it's the broader impacts that can be a little bit more challenging. So let's pay especially uh, more attention on that factor there to ensure that it is a successful component of your application statements. As you begin drafting your statement, just get started. Um, uh, Getting started is the hardest thing to do, but it is a very important step. For some of you, you want to start with an outline, bullet point each section, have your sub bullets, and then start writing a sentence or a paragraph for each bullet. If that works well for you, do that. If you are on the opposite side where you just need to simply write it all out and then go from there, do that. It may be 1 page, it may be 10 pages. I can work with you to build that up to 3 pages. And if you have 10 pages, I can work with you in refining your statement and bringing that down to a succinct 3 pages. But by outlining, by just writing a very, very rough first draft, we have something to work with and we can move from that point. Plan for many drafts of your personal statement. I recommend more than 10, usually around the 15 to 20. Successful awardees, fellows who get the award, oftentimes say that they, over 3 to 6 months, went through 20 to 25 or more drafts. Proofread before you take to others to review, and don't leave spelling and grammar checks to the software. They're not always accurate. This leads into proofreading and seeking feedback. Identify multiple proofreading partners. Think of it this way: you have a fellowship support team. That is your faculty, your lab PIs, your graduate fellowship advisor, classmates and lab mates, family and friends, roommates, the writing center, writing consultants, among others. You want a variety of individuals from a variety of backgrounds. Ask for feedback on your narrative. How does it flow? Is it succinct? Is it clear? And how your ideas are articulated. Readers should be able to walk away with a decent understanding of what you're trying to say, even if they are not familiar with the technical components. That is especially true on your research statement. Don't let spelling check and grammar checks be your primary focus of feedback and review. Um, Definitely, as you ask people to review, specify what you would like them to look at, how the narrative flows, how our ideas are articulated. Do certain things make sense for someone who is not necessarily in your area of research and study? Um, for others, you want to accentuate, please look at spelling, please look at grammar. Um, you may be wanting people to do more in-depth content review, but if they're not instructed, they'll just focus on spelling and grammar. A lot of faculty, for example, they will focus on the content, how research is discussed, how your narrative flows, with the assumption that you will be separately addressing grammar and spelling, so they won't focus on that. So to ensure that you get all the feedback that you need and that you can benefit from, be sure as you ask people to read and review your drafts that you specify, please look at this, or please look at that. Now, some frequently asked questions. The personal statement limit is 3 pages. Does this include sources, or can I have another page for bibliography? 3 page limit is total, a maximum. You cannot exceed 3 pages to add a bibliography, an appendix, additional images, or anything like that. Your final submission cannot, under any circumstance whatsoever, exceed 3 pages in the prescribed formatting. And to go over that formatting again, it is very basically single space, 11-point font, Times New Roman, 1-inch margins. And you'll find that in the solicitation as well. Can I use an image? You absolutely can use an image. This is going to be more appropriate for your research statement, but there's no prohibition of images in your personal statement. They are allowed and in some cases encouraged, such as when you are writing out equations. The NSF does say it is probably better to use an image of an equation rather than typing the equation because your text needs to be in Times New Roman, but you need to use a special font outside of Times New Roman for equations, and it can really muck up your formatting. And so an image may be preferable in those cases. But caution, images are allowed, but they do take up valuable space. So if your image is, if you're including an image, you need to make sure that it is necessary. It is purposeful. It's a better use of space than writing out what you're trying to articulate through an image. How many drafts of my personal statement should I plan to go through? I mentioned 10 to 20. I'd say more 15 to 25 because you'll go through a lot of rounds of proofreading. And I'd recommend that you uh, don't send out one draft to many people who will all provide very different feedback for you. Do one round of feedback at a time. So going through 10 to 20, that's just 10 times asking one individual person or 10 people to review one draft one time. And so if you're going back and asking 10 people to review it a second time, that is easily 20 rounds of reviewing, proofreading, and editing. There, I also want to caution here, really importantly, there is always the ability to continue perfecting your writing. But there's a point where you have to say, this is perfect for the purpose. This is as good as it gets for the purpose, because as they say, you could be gilding the lily. The lily is pretty and beautiful as is. It doesn't need additional enhancement. And so you'll get to a point where you say, this is perfect for the purpose. I don't need to work on perfecting it any further. In doctoral education, we have a saying about dissertation. What is a good dissertation? A good dissertation is a done dissertation, a completed dissertation. Once you get it good enough to defend, submit to the thesis office, submit to ProQuest, and move on and graduate, you could easily spend 5 more years rewriting, restructuring, redoing your graphs and images and such, because there's always going to be a way to make it even better. But does it need to be better? You're going to need to make a judgment call of, is this good enough? And that is not after one draft. You want to do multiple drafts, of course. A few of my proofreading partners aren't scientists or professors. Should I take their advice on how I talk about my research? 100% yes, you absolutely should. Non-STEM reviewers provide a valuable non-specialist perspective that will help shape your narrative. You want your narrative to be not complicated. You want it to be easy to read. So if a non-STEM proofreader is able to walk away with a decent idea of what you're trying to accomplish, then you're in a good space. But if they are a little confused or they have some questions, like, I really couldn't understand what you're trying to say here, or this was a little too heavy, you want to take that that feedback seriously. But also, especially on your research statements, and we're talking about personal statements here, but your research statements, if they say, I don't understand what you're trying to accomplish, take that feedback seriously. But if someone outside of your discipline says, I'm not sure I agree with your methodology or how you're planning to do your data collection, that is something that you'll want to take back to your faculty advisor, because if they're not in your field, they may not be familiar with what is the right way to do research in your area of study. So you have to make those judgment calls. Some resources that are available to you. The annual solicitation is actually already posted. It was posted to the NSF's website on July 12th. and that website is nsfgrfp.org. I've mentioned the solicitation a few times. Let me tell you what that is for those of you who are not familiar. The solicitation is an annual announcement of the award and a description of that process. So you'll find very important and very valuable information in the solicitation, including deadlines for submission, process for submission, eligibility for the award, a description of the award and the award benefits, formatting for your statements, um, application requirements, as well as a listing of all the subfields. So chemistry and then all the different chemistry subfields, etc., that you'll need to identify. So it's a valuable uh, document to reference. Past workshops, tools, and resources are found on the University of Utah's NSF-GRFP website, and that is nsf-grfp.org. Your faculty mentor and research PI, as well as other faculty that you may be familiar with who are strongly familiar with you as a student and your background. That's especially true for those of you applying as undergrads. They are excellent resources. The University of Utah Writing Center and the writing consultants are at your disposal, not just fall, spring, but also during the summer. And for those of you who are maybe struggling with getting started, with outlining, with just writing that first rough draft, the Writing Center consultants are especially well-trained and very capable in helping you get that process started. And of course, graduate fellowship advising. You can reach out to me for one-on-one appointments to answer questions, review drafts, and other support that you may need to be successful in your application submission. Thank you for joining me here today in discussing the National Science Foundation Graduate Research Fellowship and the personal statement component of your application. I'm Dr. Matthew Plooster, the Assistant Dean and Graduate Fellowship Advisor in the Graduate School, and I can be reached with any questions about the GRFP at fellowships@gradschool.utah.edu. I wish you the greatest success in your application submission.